I have not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring your ass.
These guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it. It's Flagrant Howls.
We got Kyle Theige in the house. I am Phil Mackey, and we are blessed. We are lucky. We are thrilled to be joined by both Jim Petersen and Michael Grady at the same time here on Flagrant Howls today to talk about the Wolves in the Western Conference Finals for the first time in 20 years. Bring ya ass, gentlemen. Bring ya ass.
It's unreal. It's unreal.
Yeah, I remember. I think it was last week. In fact, we asked the question at the end of the episode when the Wolves were down 3-2 with Grady. We said, on 3, can the Wolves still win this series 1-2-3? And all of us said yes. It was kind of like with pursed lips and like, yeah, they can win the series. But this podcast never lost faith, and so we'll just let's throw it to both you guys. You guys have been at the center of this, calling the games for Bally's, and Jim Pete on the radio, Michael Grady on the ground doing digital content for the team. What is it like now that this team has scaled the mountain of the Denver Nuggets and they make their way into the Western Conference Finals?
Well, it's been 20 years for me.
Yeah.
And I like what Grady said. You know, it's like if you would have known back in 2004 that it was going to be 20 years before you got back here again, would I enjoy it a little bit more? I probably should have enjoyed it a little bit more. I mean, we kind of celebrated. Phil, you weren't there. Were you? You weren't. What were you doing 20 years ago? You were like in
20 years ago.
Thing?
I remember I was like my second year in college, and all of my high school friends and I all summer were watching, like May and June, we were watching NBA playoffs at one of my buddies' houses. So yeah, I was not like in sports media yet, but I do remember watching every game for sure.
And I was there. I was at Game 7 when the Wolves beat the Kings. So I was at Target Center. I think that's where I kind of fell in love with all of this, Jim. But that was one of my strongest and earliest sports memories was my dad saving up the money to go to Game 7. Tickets were probably a little cheaper then. But that was, to me, that was the best basketball experience I've ever had up until Sunday night when, after Grady kind of reset the vibes last week, because I came in even a little down, to win Game 6 the way they did and then to win Game 7, you guys were there. The coolest thing to me was how many Wolves fans were at Ball Arena. I mean, there was "Let's Go Wolves" chants on Denver Nugget offensive possessions in the fourth quarter. That's just shows you what Jim and Grady and everyone has known already, that this is a really cool and strong fan base. They just needed a reason to cheer.
Grady, did you post your their video of Cat and Ant and the crowd? Did you post that? I don't know if I've seen it anywhere. I went on your Instagram.
Yeah, it's a reel on my Instagram, and it's this second to last post there where Cat is kind of soaking in the moment, and he's walking toward the Timberwolves faithful there at Ball Arena, while they're going bananas and cheering and waving towels, and then Ant joins him in that celebration, and it's just one of those pinch yourselves kind of moments, and obviously we know the job is not done. They're halfway toward their goal, but there has to be something to be said about the mental hurdle you had to overcome. Like we talked last week, being down 3-2, do we think they can win? And yeah, but it really comes down to if these guys believe, if these guys bust their tail and put in the work to pull out hard-fought victories in Game 6 and 7. So to be on the road in a Game 7 against the defending champs, to be down 20 points early in that third quarter, and to continue to rally together and fight through and win that game. I have to imagine, Jim, that it kind of felt like a microcosm of years and years of Timberwolves basketball, given where they are right now, having to overcome adversity, being down in a hole, and then climbing out of it, and then looking brand new.
Yeah, I started thinking about it because, like, you know, Joe Boylan came back to you and I in the back of the plane, and he was saying that Horton had told him that it was the greatest Timberwolves win in Timberwolves history. And, you know, I mean, I think we kind of said yes, of course, because of what it meant, the Game 7 and all. But when I start thinking of the greatest game, I mean, it was a terrible game. It was the first half was awful. and it was depressing. And we're down 20, and it wasn't the greatest game until it was, and the other part of that too is that, like, I think Game 6 might have been a better game. I mean, like, it still backs against the wall. You still needed to win it. So I don't know if I can say Game 7 was the
Yes,
the
you can, Jim. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can, brother. Yes, you can, brother.
7 is one great game. Say 6 and 7. I mean, like, those two games.
Game 6 provided such an exhale, obviously, to play that well and to dominate them and to win by 45. But on the road, down 20, to battle all the way back, I mean, that feeling is indescribable. And I'm so in a loving way, I'm envious of you and Alan being able to tell that story down the stretch, because that had to be a beauty to call. But that just speaks again to the mental toughness of this group, and we'll always remember it. We'll always remember, no matter what happens the rest of this postseason run. Remember that Game 7.
Can I say something else, Michael, that you provided? And I was so we flew back, and people are thinking that it was some party and stuff. The bus ride was semi-normal. The players were pretty happy, and because when we go to the airport after the games and we're on the bus, it's not just our media bus. The players come on our bus for that ride, and so there were probably, I don't know what, 8 players on the bus, Michael. Probably eight players on our bus, and they were more boisterous than normal, talking about the game and stuff like that, which is great. And we were kind of normal. The rest of us are on the bus, kind of minding our own business, looking at our phones and stuff. It's and then when we got on the plane, I mean, there were some libations on the plane, but not on certain sections,
Yes.
And so it was kind of subdued. But when we landed, I was walking off the plane. I was walking with Kyle, and so I told Kyle, I said, dude, I have to tell you, I was really enjoying watching you on the court after the game, because Kyle had his wife and his son on the court, and he was lifting his son up, and like he was having his son dunk the basketball. It was so great. And he probably was out there for, I mean, Michael, what would you say, 20, 30 minutes? Like Kyle was out there.
Wow.
And so Michael was capturing some of the video of it. And I told Kyle, it's like, I was really enjoying watching all of you guys. I was watching, between Kat and Ant soaking it up with the fans, and you out there with your son and your wife and your family. I said, he goes, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, wow, that means a lot coming from you. Like, I know you've seen a lot and stuff. And I said, yeah. I said, go on Grady's Instagram, man, and check it out, video of it. And he was like, oh, wow, that's great. Anyway, like that'll be a memory that's like in my mind, like seeing Kat and Michael captured it too. If you guys haven't seen Michael's video, it's almost like an art piece, the way that he captured and zoomed that you can see all the fans.
Good filter too. Yeah.
I mean, he's a cinematographer. Grady's got like
I love it.
And just to clarify for those at home, Jim's talking about Kyle Anderson and the cool moment he had post game.
Yeah.
Kyle Theige had a less cool moment. I was just like crying man tears on a podcast.
Love it.
Regret that a little bit, but
no,
it was a cool experience. And I mean, for like the track the pack stuff that the social team does, a track the pack of just whether you're at the arena like Michael and Jim or guys like me and Phil at home, halftime, just to see what halftime down 15 to the defending champs on the road. That was an interesting 15 minutes in my household, Phil, because I really needed that Michael Grady pep talk, but for my wife this time, just like, hey, Krasinski tweeted it out at half that the Wolves were, I think, going into that game 6-1 when Ant had 5 or less points at half.
Yeah,
and that kind of fixed it for me. I was like, all right, this team can do it. So Jim's right. The first half was not good, but Jim, I think my only argument is that that's what made it such a memorable game, is that it seemed like they were dead in the water. They put the graphic that says the biggest Game 7 comeback is 11 points. They're down 20, and all of a sudden it's 13, it's 8, it's 4. And then Ant hits that 3 to make it a 10-point lead. And you and Alan on the call, like Grady said, that was when it kind of peaked for all of us. It was holy bleep, this is happening.
That's going to be one of the greatest sequences.
Yeah, I'm just going to mute Jim quick. Jim's reception's catching back up. Go ahead, Grady.
I think that we're going to remember that sequence, and I love that Nas, who didn't have a great game, who wasn't having a great game up to that point, I love that his fingerprints were all over it. And he had a block on Jokic, and then he had the tip dunk off the Ant miss. Then there's a Conley steal. Conley, Nas, Ant, corner three, bang, 10-point lead. Like, that sequence is as beautiful as it gets, and that's what won it. That's it. That 5-point swing right there. Nas block, Nas tip dunk, steal, and three. That pushed the Timberwolves to the Western Conference Finals. So that was as beautiful as it gets, and I just we Jim and I, we talked about it with the celebration and the love on the Timberwolves bench. There was a moment. Was it the Milwaukee game, Jim, where the coaching staff finally listened to Rudy and they flipped where they shoot in the second half.
Yeah.
And we were wondering, are there some schematic reasons? Do they want to hear the coach's instruction on offense in crucial moments in the game? But it turned out it was just vibes. And when you see the second half of that game and the Timberwolves bench standing the majority of the second half, they rarely sat in the second half. Meanwhile, when the camera pans over and you see the Denver bench, they're sitting and not giving much energy at all. They didn't have a lot to cheer for. But even when things weren't going well, the Timberwolves bench was up, encouraging, applauding. It just really made a difference in the game when you're talking about a battle of attrition. And it looked like Denver wore down. And as the game went on, even in that altitude that they try to throw in your face, 5'280",
Yeah.
our guys got stronger. It was wild.
Yeah, the I think
Rudy's
it's funny, like you
turnover was
mentioned.
pretty important too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just real quick here. I think just back to the decision to play offense in the fourth quarter by the bench. It is funny because when that happened, we're like, are there like analytical reasons why they would do this? Is there like, is this a research driven decision? And I think Grady nailed it. No, it's vibes, man. Like when it's a close game late, yeah, it's nice to be able to maybe hear some calls or whatever on offense. But when you knock down a huge shot and you got your teammates waving towels and pointing him, and the culmination of it, you mentioned that one sequence, but when the shot clock is running down and Rudy Gobert hits him, you want to compare any of the Wolves players to Michael Jordan? Rudy Gobert, that's the new logo. And then you get Josh Minot with the wide open mouth agape, right? Like I don't know if you can quantify the value of that, but it feels like it's worth something in a moment like that in Game 7.
Yeah, the
and
love is real.
Jalen Clark is like first team all reaction and all bench mob. But it's cool to see that happen in front of your own bench. I know from a coaching perspective, it's also kind of beneficial too. But Jim kind of made a funny point during the season where on reviews, like just don't listen to big guys because I don't think the big guys are. No one has waved their finger more than Rudy Gobert this year, and not in a Dikembe way, like in a hey, review that. So for them to finally listen to him on one and say, you know what, maybe we'll switch sides, I think it did benefit them. But that was, the shot, the Ant 3, the Ant steal. The Nas block. I think Nas actually had 2 blocks on Jokic in that final couple minutes when Karl had to sit down with 5. So just an impressive performance. Jaden had maybe the best game of his career as well in the biggest spot, or 6 and 7 were his 2 best games. So
Yep.
I just thought it was cool, man, that they did it the same way they've done it all year. They were tough. They were resilient. They were mature. They played defense. That's how that 28-14 third quarter started. And now we look ahead, right? You guys are ready for 24 hours from now, Game 1 at Target Center, Western Conference Finals, Jim, for the first time in 20 years. I've never been more excited for a basketball game.
I think Jim was a few seconds behind us here. If Jim, if you can hear us, sometimes.
Otherwise, that was the worst take I've ever had. No one else was excited. Just went dead silent.
Jim, if you can hear us, jump out of the room and jump back in, and that might fix the just the connection problems there. But yeah, the Mavericks are a different team, Grady, after the trade deadline. They're playing better defense. Wow. It's hard to kind of figure out what to do with Luka's shooting slump in these playoffs. On one hand, He's not playing as well as maybe he otherwise would be in these last 3 weeks. But on the other hand, he might be due to just shoot like 50% from downtown in a playoff series. So, and then Kyrie Irving is another guy, much like Jamal Murray, but even better, can just get a shot off with anyone defending him. So in some ways, I feel like you just beat the hardest team in the Nuggets, but that doesn't mean that you have a free path to the NBA Finals. So I don't know. What's your quick sort of synopsis of what the Wolves face now? By the way, you have to come off this high and take a deep breath and then jump right back into a hellacious playoff series. That's another factor.
Yeah, and that's the case with both teams. I think there were several guys, including Kyrie Irving, who were in tears after beating OKC. So from an emotional standpoint, I think they're riding a high that they have to refocus and then get ready to play the best, in my opinion, the best team in the West, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And so for the Wolves, again, it was kind of surreal at practice today, seeing the guys do their 3-man weave while clapping it up and cheering each other on at the start of practice. And I'm thinking to myself, we're still practicing. Like there's more games. There's more games to be played. We're not done. Look at this. We're having this enthusiastic, high energy practice in mid to late May. Like it's a privilege to still be playing ball this late. But I think going back to what you were saying, I think Luka, he's dealing with a lot of things. Everybody's dealing with stuff, but the fact that there are games every other day, I think works in the Timberwolves' favor. I feel like the 3 days off between games 2 and 3 in that Denver series helped Jamal Murray, get healthy and play at a high level in games 3 and 4. So the fact that it's every other day, the Timberwolves might be a little bit more healthy outside of Mike Conley than Dallas, and so that works with Minnesota on top of having home court advantage. Luka's going to be a handful whether he's on one leg or not, but the Wolves can throw Jaden McDaniels at Luka Doncic. They can throw Anthony Edwards at Kyrie Irving. Who are the Dallas Mavericks throwing at Anthony Edwards, and who are they throwing at Karl Anthony Towns? Mm-hmm. And then whose supporting cast do you trust more?
Yeah,
Dallas or Minnesota? So I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to get too high on the horse or anything like that. If these guys play the basketball that they've been playing for this playoffs, sweeping Phoenix, battling back and beating Denver, given the way that they're playing, I find it very hard to believe that Dallas can beat this team 4 times.
I think that's a great, the X factor. I'm sure we can think of players. I think of PJ Washington for Dallas. I think of probably maybe Kyle Anderson in this series. Jim, we're just talking Dallas Wolves kind of preview here, but as much as it wasn't a Kyle Anderson series against Denver, I think Kyle does a good job of staying in front of Luka because both Luka Doncic is awesome, but he's not necessarily built for speed.
They're both
probably built for comfort. Yeah, they're both kind of slow. So
one just has a quicker release than the other one.
But Grady's point on just depth or endurance or physical stamina, I thought that really showed in Game 7. You kind of saw Nuggets players, Jokic especially. He played 47 minutes, but they didn't have anyone off the bench, so they didn't have the depth. And then just their overall conditioning, yes, at 52.80 elevation, they were exhausted. So I know that's been a important thing the Wolves have focused on is getting in better shape and being the best in shape team on the court. So every other day having a game and no big breaks is going to be, in my mind, an X factor for the Wolves because they have more guys they can play than Dallas can.
Well, I was talking to Javar Gillette, who is one of our incredible trainers and in our sports science department. And one of the things Michael and I had talked about is all the stuff that we see behind the scenes before and after the games that goes on back there by the locker room, and all of the things that these guys do to get these guys ready to play. And I don't think that Rudy Gobert gets enough credit for being the athlete that he is. And you look at Anthony Edwards, all the load that he has to carry physically on both ends of the floor. For him to be able to do that at the level that he does, it's not just about being 22 years of age. It's the sports science that's going behind some of this, the stuff that these guys do. So, Grady, we're going to probably do this next year and really kind of chronicle some more of that, see if we can tell some of these stories, because I don't think people have any idea the job that these guys behind the scenes, that these guys do. Greg Farnham and his whole staff, David Hines, all these people that are so fantastic who nobody knows who they are. So conditioning definitely came to bear in that Denver series. You can't tell me it didn't, because those guys were exhausted and we weren't.
I can't say enough about given the play-in format to be able to have almost a week off or a better portion of a week off before the playoffs start. I remember Ant saying, I got in the best shape of my life before game one of that Phoenix series. And I just appreciate these guys are all locked in. They're all locked in and focused, and they all want this individually, collectively. And I feel one of the realest quotes was when Ant was asked about, do you want to win this for Game 7 for Mike Conley, who's 0 for 4 in Game 7s in his career. And Ant says, no, I want to win this for me. For me. And I understand what the reporter may have gone for, you pulling the heartstrings a little bit and win one for the Gipper or whatever it may be. But every person to a man, when that camera pans on that Timberwolves bench and you see as Jim Pete mentioned, Javar, David Hines, Chris Hines, Greg Farnham, Aaron. There's so many names I'm obviously going to leave out, but there's so many people when that camera pans. All those people that wear a zip up, with the Timberwolves logo on it. They all individually have a story, and for their own personal reasons and then collective reasons, they all desperately want to win it. And I think that's what's exciting about all of this. Everybody has a story on why this is important to them and why they want to win it and why they're giving everything that they have. And so it's championship mentality, top to bottom.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I can't get past is, and we've tried to flesh this out on some of our podcasts, but it felt to me like, gun to the head, who wins that last series, that it wasn't time for the Wolves to get past the Nuggets yet. It felt like, but then Game 2 happens and you start to, holy cow, like all they have to do now is win 2 more and the Nuggets start coming back. But I can't get past this feeling that the Wolves are upsetting the natural course of NBA history, that a 28-year-old 3-time MVP with a team that just won the championship is like, they're supposed to get through in 6 or 7 games, pat the Wolves on the head and say, "No, you almost got us. Nice try, but it's our turn. This is our turn to push a dynasty here on the league." And like for the Wolves to flip it like that and send the Nuggets packing, and then you've got the reporter who asked Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns, usually you have to suffer a massive defeat in the playoffs, and they're both like, "Guy, how much more losing do you want us to do? We've been losing for 20 years around here." So there's this sense that the Wolves, to me, are just going out and taking something that nobody thinks should be theirs right now. Is that a hot take?
No, I understand the essence of the question from Vince Goodwill to the guys, because it's something that we talked about last week on the podcast, talking about the Pistons, had to suffer heartbreaking losses to the Celtics before they pushed through, and the Bulls had to have heartbreaking losses to the Pistons before pushing through. So that adds to it's kind of tough to articulate that to a player. Vince struggled with that, but from our perspective, this is what we've seen in NBA history. So to see the Timberwolves to stake their claim in emphatic fashion in the way that they're doing it is something special. And the way that we see this, and Jim, jump in on this too, because there are a lot of national guys who are playing catch up on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Yes. Kendrick Perkins has been watching I'll give him credit. He's been watching most of the season. Stephen A. Smith was invited to a game and he's kind of been paying attention since, but there's a lot of national folks who are playing catch up. And I don't know the numbers on this and how to look this up. For a team has a legitimate shot of winning the championship, they may have had the fewest number of national TV appearances during the regular season. I don't know how many times they were on TNT, where it was a national exclusive, but Denver with Jokic, maybe they, I don't know how many they had a season ago, of course, when they won it. But before that, I'm sure Giannis was on national TV a bunch of times. Before that, it's Steph Curry and the Warriors a bunch of times. LeBron James a bunch of times. The Timberwolves are doing this without having a lot of fanfare during the regular season and not being recognized nationally for most of the season. That speaks and again exemplifies how they have just gone up and just snatched the spotlight from the traditional names that you would see in this position this late in the year. And that's what makes it really special to me, Jim.
I mean, people are thinking that Michael Jordan, they all think about Jordan having to go through the Pistons. You know what I mean? Like he had to suffer all these defeats, in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Pistons and get the crap beat out of him in order to win his championship. It took Jordan 7 years to get there. So they're thinking that. But hey, Magic won the championship his rookie year. I was saying this to you guys before. I mean, Magic didn't wait around. He just beat Dr. J his rookie year. Larry didn't sit there and wait around. He beat Moses Malone when he's 22, 23 years. I mean, like he won it in 81 on tape delay too, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly.
Those games in 1981 when Larry Bird won his first championship was on tape delay. People saw those games at 10:30 at night. I mean, it was ridiculous. Tim Duncan didn't wait. Tim Duncan, they won their first championship in 99, the lockout season. He had been drafted in 97. So yeah, you had David Robinson, but Anthony Edwards has Karl Anthony Towns. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't think you need to wait. And he's not wired up that way, obviously. This dude is like, I don't care who's standing in front of me. I'm collecting heads. I saw somebody had a meme of him on Twitter today with he had his hands down low like that, and somebody had like all the heads in his hands like that. It was great. And they were Jamal Murray heads, which is beside the point. It's just but I just can't say enough. Like for Michael's right. When we got the schedule when it came out, I'm like, did you people watch Anthony Edwards play for Team USA this past summer and see what happened? Like how you didn't. Whatever you thought you were going to do, like how you didn't get off of that after Team USA and what happened you know what I'm saying, Michael? Like, yep. I just can't believe that TNT and ESPN didn't see what was coming because it was right there for you to see.
5 nationally televised games for the Wolves this regular season. That would have ranked them 20th in the NBA. The Warriors were first with 29. Just a fun one. The Spurs had 11. So those are TNT, ESPN, and ABC games. But I will say I used to complain about that a lot. And then when I moved out here and I realized that those games black out my local coverage, that was 5 games I didn't get to listen to you guys. So I'm actually not going to campaign for more national TV games because then I have to listen to other people call them. So I'm okay with 0 national TV games. But to Grady's bigger point, like people are realizing now what the 4 of us probably knew last year. Right, that this is a special team with some special players. So now we look ahead to the Abu Dhabi Revenge Series, right? Like these are the guys you watched in those preseason games across the world, Wolves and Mavs, and now you get 7, hopefully maybe 5, in my opinion, but really, really good games against 2 teams that I know the Wolves were 3-1, Phil, against the Mavs in the regular season, but the last time they played was like January, and Dallas made some really good moves at the deadline. So they've never really seen each other at this level, either team, and it's going to be another great basketball series.
Yeah. What is you before we say goodbye to you guys, Jim Pete and Michael Grady? We've already kind of gone over like some of the matchup stuff, but does your, I mean, I hate making predictions on this show, but does your guys' gut tell you that like this is the favorite to win the championship right now of the 4 teams left? Like, where do you sort of put this version of the Timberwolves right now?
No jinx.
One game, game one tomorrow, and that's all.
Everybody's stress levels are high. I'm sure Jim is feeling it. I could barely contain myself. I was surrounded by Nuggets fans in Game 7, and I was losing my shit. And but what was helping me? There was this guy. I wish I should have got his name. But the whole building is going crazy as Nuggets are going on their run. And I look over to my left, and there's this Timberwolves fan with a buddy of his waving the hell out of a Nasri towel. And I dapped that guy up before the game started, but he was going through it because he was right behind the Timberwolves bench where the majority of the Wolves fans were. This guy was on an island by himself. And so I just got to give him a shout out. So I'm stressing through. And I mentioned that I'm superstitious, and so I know jinx, but the Timberwolves are a better team than Dallas Mavericks. Better coached, more depth. They have more history together. They've been through more, in my opinion. And like I said before, I just can't see a scenario where they lose 4 times to this Dallas Mavericks team. And then in the NBA Finals, like I have ties to Indiana, a team that I love. The last time that I was associated with the team and played the Celtics in the playoffs, I was swept. I do not like the Celtics at all. But that's a hell of a matchup. We had 2 really good games, Jim, against the Celtics this season. I'm talking about box office, love it. And the one that we lost, we didn't have Conley and Rudy.
Yeah, the only time I played in the NBA Finals as a player was against the Celtics. So Larry Bird's last championships, the 16th was the one that they won. So Kevin McHale took my ring. I really resent that. So I want to win. I want to win this one because I just want to be able to redeem that one. And then, I just think that the Timberwolves. We haven't really talked about, and maybe you guys talked about it when I was off air, but I mean, Jaden McDaniels made second team All NBA, and Rudy Gobert is first team, and I just think that defensively, I think that this is a much better defensive team than the Dallas Mavericks, and offensively, we've got arguably the best player in the league. I think that Ant is really elevated. Like, it's been difficult for us to be able to say that because we would seem like Homer saying that, but I think that now that I feel fairly comfortable saying that Anthony Edwards has elevated himself to at least in the top, for sure, the top 5, and in our minds, maybe the top 1. I mean, how many offensive players are more dynamic than him? So I don't feel like I'm a homer now saying that. I think it's evident to people what they see. And from a must-see TV standpoint, which player in the playoffs right now is must-see? I don't think you're saying that about Jason Tatum. Are you?
Jim, tell them about the end of practice. The awards given out.
So Anthony Edwards, they gave out 3 awards. It was the best dunk, awards. The fan awards. And so it's the best dunk, which is Anthony Edwards, the best block, which is Anthony Edwards, and the best photograph, which is the photograph that our guy Fran took of the dunk in Utah. So
that's awesome.
So they gave, the PR was really stealth. Derek was really stealth the way that he kind of, it's like these little round discs. It's a glass disc that had the award name on it, and he kind of distributed it amongst players around the circle at the end of practice. So Finchie's got his little notepad, he's got his little note, and he's going down the list of the things he's got to say. And so that was the last thing. And so it just was great how all the players that had the little award walked it over to Ant and gave it to him. So that was fantastic. It was fantastic. And then after that, we found out about all NBA defense. So so it's a great day. I just think that the Timberwolves are the best team in the playoffs right now. And I think they're going to show us.
I think best dunk, best block, best photo, and then to cap it all off with best quote. Simple, 3 words, not 2 words, Grady, but 3 words. Bring your ass. Everyone, come to Minnesota. Charles Barkley. Yeah. I know you've been out here for some 3M stuff, so it wasn't 20 years, right, Jim? Like, he's been here for some golf. But the TNT crew being here, I mean, Minnesota's going to be lively again this weekend. It's going to be warm weather, so I hope to see I'll see you guys, but I hope to see a lot of people at Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, because this is what we waited 20 years for, was an opportunity for something like this. So
yeah, and this, like, it's kind of crazy. Last thing, and then we'll say goodbye to you guys, but there's like generations of Minnesota sports fans, and Grady has been able to feel this anxiety and this nervous tension, this fatalism from Minnesota sports fans, where, oh my gosh, the opposing team punches back in a series, and now the ticket prices are going to go down because we can't bear to see what happens next. And the Timberwolves are making it okay to open your eyes again. It's not always going to be smooth sailing and easy, but the fact that the Timberwolves are the team that might change the feeling of a sports city, like the Red Sox did for Boston back in 2004, and there's other examples. The Wolves are the tip of the spear, the tip of the spear, maybe, for a new mindset among Minnesota sports fans. I find that fascinating.
Because they've answered every call. There were so many things that people felt, and I tweeted this, falls into the narrative of, here's another Minnesota sports moment. Best team for the majority of the season in the Western Conference. The only team that they could not beat in the West was the Phoenix Suns during the regular season, who beat them in blowout fashion. And then in the final day of the regular season, you lose to that Sun squad. And then guess what? That's your first round matchup. Mm-hmm. And so you heard the collective groans of, oh, how Minnesota is this number one in the West all season. And the one team we can't beat, that's who we're facing in round one. Yeah. And they sweep them. And then in round two, you're facing the defending champs. You go up 2-0. Then you lose 3 in a row for the first time all season. And there's that narrative again of, same Wolves. And then they win games 6 and 7. So I think in terms of the narrative about, Minnesota sports, the team, whatever it may be, there's nuance to all of this. Yes, it sucks to fall short for 20 years, but there's nuance to all of this. And I love the way that they're changing the mindset, because I think players on the court feed off of that belief from the fan base. And even though there might have been some collective groans after losing 3 games in a row, Jim, you guys can back this up. Game 6 was unreal. Like there was no doubt from the people in that arena at Target Center that they were going to beat even after the 9-2 hole, that they were going to beat the brakes off, and that they really believed in this squad.
Well, look, like you need to have a generational talent to win a championship. Think about just all the players down the line that have won championships over the past 30 years. It's generational talent. It's Magic, Bird, Jordan, Kobe, Shaq, LeBron, Duncan. And what's been going on recently with obviously Giannis and Nikola Jokic has been huge. But I think that we have that generational talent. I think that we have that one guy. But I shared with each of you something that I've been tracking for a long time, and that's coaches who win championships. And so I think that not only do you not need a generational talent, but you need someone that can guide that generational talent and how to be a champion. And the fact that we have Chris Finch now, who I think is that coach, I think that, and Ant said best coach in the league, and I've been saying best coach in team history, and I would even go as far. Chris Finch is just, we see him work, Michael, and we're privy to a lot of stuff that we get to see him operate. We don't get to go into the coaches meetings, but the way that this staff works, like this, this whole alignment of generational talent, role players, other stars around them that give your team a backbone, and then having the coaching staff that goes along with it that guide this unit. I just think Minnesota has all that it takes to win a championship. And so if Chris Finch wins a championship, he'll do it in his 4th year as coach, which jives with when coaches tend to do it. So we can have this conversation another time, because I think it's an interesting topic.
I love it, man. Yes.
But I just think that we have all that we need to win a championship. And so do the Celtics, by the way. And so do the Dallas Mavericks, because they're pretty well coached. They have some generational talents on their team, too. So it's going to be fascinating. I can't wait for it to start tomorrow.
Amen. Well, we love you guys.
Yes, thank you,
It's been awesome just getting your thoughts here on Flagrant Howls. And, Jim Pete on the Wolves radio broadcast, and Grady. Follow him on Instagram. He's putting a bunch of stuff up on his own accounts and on the Timberwolves digital platforms too. And you guys are along for this whole ride here, starting again with Game 1. Halfway through, we start the second half of the playoffs tomorrow night at Target Center, boys. Can't wait.
Enjoy.
Thanks, fellas.
Thank you guys. Michael Grady and Jim Petersen. We're going to keep it right here for a few minutes, Kyle, because we have a couple other things that we want to dive into as well. But before we go any further, we'd like to welcome a new partner across SKOR North here, our friends at Legendary Clothing, okay? It's LGNDY.com. It's Legendary. They are family-owned, veteran-owned, and they donate a portion of all proceeds to veteran organizations. I'm actually going to do a live demonstration right now here, okay? I'm going to open. This is some of the most buttery, soft fabric here. They got quarter zips. They got golf shirts, golf polos. Look at this bad boy right here. Look at this glorious.
Oh, what's that? Oh, that's fun.
Oh my goodness. I like kind of a fun. So fun, quirky designs for the YouTube audience. You can see this. This is I believe it's the Dia. Is it Dia? I'm going to butcher this. Dia de Muerte design.
Dia de los Muertes. I think I didn't say it right, but Day of the Dead.
Yes. And so they're brand new here to Flagrant Howls and to SKOR North. And they've got some fun. We have a couple other announcements of what they have to unleash on their website in the coming days. But based in the Twin Cities, promo code HOWL at checkout for 20% off your order. So go to, again, it's lgndy.co, lgndy.co, promo code HOWL at checkout for 20% off your order.
Fantastic hats. I already got one.
Yeah.
I should have worn it, but lots of different sizes and really comfortable clothes. That polo looked 10 out of 10, so I will have to get myself one of those. And unlike other companies, they have stuff available on their website, so that makes me happy as well. We got to stop these limited releases. People want to buy stuff. Okay? That's all I'm going to say. We want to buy this stuff. People want the merch. They want to have – we don't need to make this a club, so
amen.
Shout out to Legendary.
So I want to give Kyle a platform here. You text me and said, "Hey, I want to rant about something. Can I please rant about something?" So yeah.
Well, we haven't had one in a while, right? Because we've been forced to talk about basketball strictly because this team is really good and is 6 weeks past the regular season now, and we might be doing this for another month. So we don't have the off season to talk about all our fun topics. But just in general, I was just curious. I just want to ask you because you've been in this sports media business much longer than I have, but I was at a restaurant the other night and I was just thinking like, man, I'm glad that the people cooking the food are passionate about food. Or like you bring your car to the shop. You're like, why wouldn't I want someone who not only knows a lot about cars, but is like passionate about fixing the cars? And still stand by the fact that I kind of regret just sobbing like a Hallmark movie on the pod on Sunday. But just as I kind of navigate these waters and I kind of review what took place in the second round and I look around to see, I think I've had enough with like the self-demeaning thing about being a fan, in like sports media, because there's not any other industry where I'd want the people I'm consuming or working with to not give a bleep about what they're doing. Like you want someone who's passionate about healthcare to take care of your health. So this concept that you're kind of frowned upon because, he's a fan. That's why, like, on this inverse of that, you don't like listening to people that don't care about the Wolves. You don't like listening to the national media people that don't watch the games. So then why wouldn't you want someone who watches all the games and is, like, passionate about what they do? In a way, though, that's not, calling people bums or saying that other fans are adorable. That's what I think is so beautiful, specifically about the Minnesota Timberwolves fan base, is 99.9% of them, Phil, like just wants to have fun in our community and isn't taking pot shots at other teams or whatever, because we haven't really done much for 20 years. But it's weird to see how some of the teams that the Wolves have eliminated, those people that cover those teams have chimed in on the Wolves or their fans or the people that cover the team. And I think it's interesting. So I don't think, if you're trying to get into this, by the way, the number one piece of advice I would have is don't take it too seriously. Like you and I were so wrong calling the Nuggets Purdue last year, which was fun.
I called them a fake 1 seed at one point.
Yeah, but we didn't.
By the way, if you look at their win-loss record with the other 1 seeds,
never beaten a 50-win team in the playoffs.
By that, yeah.
But they proved us wrong, and then we came on and we're like, we were wrong. So this pride of not accepting when you're wrong, dude. How many dumb things have I said this year? Now I've had a pretty good record this year of backing Chris Finch and Jaden McDaniels in this team, so I might know a little ball, but I don't know. If you're just trying to get into this and you're like, I'm a fan and I don't want to be, looked down upon, I think it's great that fans cover the team. And I think it's great that people like Dane and John and Chris and stuff also cover it from a really legitimate professional perspective. But I don't know, man. If you don't like cooking food, I don't want to eat it. So
I have thoughts on this. I don't think first of all, dude, you be you. If you're feeling a certain way, and I mean, you are unapologetically you. You are a Timberwolves fan who also has media platforms. Now, I don't think that if we were to take a pie chart of everyone who covers sports, and by covering sports, it could be any number of things. You could be a beat writer who is mostly rooted in written coverage. You could be an idiot on a microphone like me or like you, and you're opining about what's happening, but you're not necessarily a big J, capital J journalist, right? There's different levels of covering a team. I think we need to make room for 2 different types of coverage.
Yeah.
There definitely needs to be a layer of big J, capital J journalism in which you need to create some separation between your love for the subject and, like, to me, if you're a chef, do you love the process of cooking? Well, for some people, it might be you love the process of journalism and you are objectively covering the subject that you are assigned to, as opposed to being, emotionally attached to the subject in a fan sort of way. I think we need that because whether it's sports or whether it's politics or anything, or, your local government establishments, like we need people who can objectively uncover the truth about organizations.
Yeah.
But because sports are fun and sports are entertainment and it's the toy department of society, we also need a layer of levity and a layer of not so serious. And that's probably where Flagrant Howls comes in as your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast. You might find one or two of the hosts literally crying to start a Game 7 recap
Come on,
podcast.
Judd.
And that's and that's fine and that's awesome. I have done both in my career. I think, in the last 5 or 10 years, I have gone much more away from needing to be on the ground and reporting. There's brilliant people who do that. I have found my sweet spot, sort of that second level of giving opinions and providing entertainment sort of on top of the day-to-day grind and beat. But yeah, one thing that does stand out is sometimes in sports media, people forget what they really wanted to do when they were 12 years old. And then you almost get like swallowed up by the grind of late nights, because it sounds ridiculous. If you work like a construction job, you're saying, wait a second, you're complaining about being up till 2 a.m. covering sports. I'll trade places with you in a second. But, if you're at every single game for 10 straight years and it's very monotonous, there's a level of jadedness in sports media that would be shocking to people outside the industry. And I think, like, when you and I launched, not that we have all the answers by any means, but when we launched Flagrant Howls here a couple years ago, we said, let's not take it so seriously. We're definitely gonna have opinions on things, but let's literally make it a lifestyle, tongue-in-cheek podcast. But so there's room for that, but there's also room for building sources and breaking news and your craft not being rooting for the Timberwolves, but being a good journalist. Like, there's got to be room for both those things in sports media, in my opinion.
Flagrant Howls, which came in today as the 7th most popular basketball podcast in the country, has never been higher than after some weirdo just cried. So if you are listening,
Kilborn, clean it up, Kilborn.
No, and to kind of close this out, but there are people that, and I'm not talking about the Wolves, I'm just talking about any team that that is your favorite team. There are people that cover your favorite team that don't like sports, and you know what I mean? Like, so why would you want to consume that? I mean, again, you don't want to be too far extreme on the other side and be chastising other fans or other fan bases or calling other players and teams bums, but I just think it's important that whatever you do, whether it be cheering for this team, covering this team, fixing cars, making food, selling insurance, why wouldn't you want to do it with passion? And why wouldn't you want to put your real self into it? Because then you feel proud about what you got out of it. So this wasn't really even about me. Again, the only people I don't listen to are the people that have anonymous. It's funny, man. People don't like anonymous quotes about their favorite team, and they say, oh, put your name on it. Come on now, put your name on. But then they're anonymous on social media as they tell you to go bleep yourself. So there's always been a little irony there for me.
I actually love when Bob 95643 chimes in on social media.
If you, because I've also seen this too, and you and I get a lot of emails about this, or just how do you get into this? Just be yourself is my biggest. I know more and more people are going to start covering the Timberwolves now. More and more people want to make videos and write and do podcasts and stuff, and I tell all of them, like, do it. Like, just get into it, get reps, and be yourself. Don't try to be Zach Lowe, be, Joe Thompson. Like, do what makes you happy, and yeah, that was my rant, but I just thought it was important because I think it's okay to be a fan of the team you cover, because to your point, we need the real professionals like Dane and Chris and Jace and Britt, but we also need people like you and Judd and what SKOR North represents. So
yeah, I think, like, my last thought on it is you're 100% right. We do need fans in sports media. We also need people that cover objectively in sports media without any ties to fandom, because that's how we get a perfect balance. Maybe not perfect, but like a balance of all different angles of sports media. So you're on this podcast, you're going to see idiots waving flags and playing Ode to Joy and maybe crying. In other markets and other platforms, you're going to see something that's not quite that. By the way, over at scorenorth.com/shop, you can get your Bring Ya Ass shirts. scorenorth.com/shop. Bring Ya Ass over to scorenorth.com/shop. There's a QR code on the YouTube channel right now. We also have Break Every Record swag. We've got Wolves Culture swag as well. So check it out. And all sorts of Purple Daily stuff over at scorenorth.com/shop.
48 minutes of Howl. That's good.
You talk to Ross, we'll hook you up with whatever you
Before we close it out, Jim and Grady did like the professional way of answering the question, Both teams are really good. I'm excited for the basketball series. That's not what you and I do. I was pretty confident, right, that they would beat the Suns. We kind of went back and forth, and I was like, I'm not as concerned about them. They have a glass jaw, and I was right. The Denver series was pure ethical hoops, and we got it. Big margins in every game, but 7 games of that was fun. I am really excited for Mavs Wolves because I like the Mavs. I like how they handled the trade deadline. I like how it's an elite backcourt surrounded by a bunch of guys that are kind of 3-and-D and toughness and rim protectors. So I am excited. Whoever wins this series will be the team that I blindly root for in the finals. But we can't do this and not ask for our own predictions. So it's no disrespect. I just think home court, depth, every other day, endurance, coaching. I will say Timberwolves in 5.
Ooh, 5. You're going 5.
Because you close it out at home.
Yeah, I don't think they need to close out at home.
No, I think that they will this time.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say Wolves in 6. I'm going to say they get another closeout on the road. I think Dallas is going to put up a fight. It wouldn't shock me if the Wolves have like a game 1 hangover from scaling this mountain, even though they have the extra day off. But I also, unless something weird happens or something changes, I mean, right now I am comfortable saying I think that we see the first major Minnesota men's championship since 1991. I'm there.
Let's not sugarcoat. We got to watch Ant and Carl versus Katie and Booker, and then all those guys against Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Jokic might be one of the best 10 players of all time. And now to see him go up against Luka in a kind of different version of Kyrie that has really bought into everything about this team. This is going to be, whether it's 5, 6, or it goes the other way for Dallas, this is going to be another elite basketball series with some big all-star performances. So you're getting maybe the 2 best under 25 players in the league. I know Wemby's in there too, but Luka versus Ant is going to be, I think, as good, if not better, than Ant versus Jokic. So it's going to be really good basketball.
And these 2 guys are going to be tied to each other as competitors in the West probably longer than, like, Jokic is a handful of years older.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
than Ant. So this is the first of maybe several battles between these 2 guys over the next 8 to 10 years, provided they both stay in the Western Conference. So it's going to be wild. We're both going to be at Target Center tomorrow night.
I'll see you at Target Center. I'll see Judd. Maybe we'll see a former 7-footer. I don't know this weekend, but it's going to be a good time at Target Center.
He's putting the vibe out there. He's putting it out there. Let's go. So, yeah, that's a wrap here on this Western Conference Finals preview episode. Thanks to Michael Grady. Thanks to Jim Petersen.
Yes.
For Kyle Theige, producer Ross, I'm Phil Mackey, and this is a Timberwolves Lifestyle Podcast. Bring ya ass.